I'm Paul Zigo. This is Cinema for Cynics, and before we get started with today's review, I wanted to let you know that for the rest of October, it's Paul-O-Ween. Tell them about Paul-O-Ween, Chauncey. Thanks a lot. You heard him. For the rest of October, I'm going to be watching nothing but horror movies, with the exception of Friday's films, which may or may not end up being horror movies. Those will be new films in the theater. So stick with me for the rest of October as I search for something scary. 2011's The Innkeepers is a horror movie that isn't sure it's really a horror movie. After watching it, I'm not sure it qualifies either. I mean, it has all the usual stuff: spooky old hotel, ghost story, jump scares, a couple of 20-somethings fooling around with supernatural forces they don't fully understand. So why the confusion? Well, let's try and find out. The Innkeepers follows Claire and Luke, the aforementioned 20-somethings, as they staff this old hotel on a final weekend before going out of business. Luke is an amateur ghost hunter / college dropout slacker, and Claire is your typical quirky indie movie girl, awkward, unsure of herself, and way prettier than she seems to think she is. In just describing our two principal characters, the tonal problems of the movie begin to show. It's presented more like an indie comedy / drama than a horror film. Two 20-somethings working a dead-end job together, with the ghost story as an amusing foil to set up their awkwardly flirtatious conversations. The first 2/3 of this movie never even attempts to be actual horror. In fact, writer-director Ty West seems intent on convincing you that nothing scary is real. Long, tense build-ups end in awkward jokes so often that you're trained to disregard the ghost story entirely.
I don't want to scare you, but I'm standing right behind you. Sorry.
Fuck! What the fuck? Oh my god!
Instead, you're left with Claire and Luke as they drift aimlessly from conversation to conversation, each lost in their own versions of a quarter-life crisis. Even Lena Dunham makes a cameo, further cementing that you're watching a low-budget indie film about how hard it is to find your niche these days. There are a couple of hotel guests involved, too. One of them a has-been actress turned psychic healer. She and Claire have this seance of sorts at one point in the film that culminates in, you guessed it, nothing. You're left with the impression that she's just a bitter old alcoholic and just another quirky character in the dry rom-com that is The Innkeepers. Of course, you know you're watching a movie that's classified as horror, so the game is up. You know the boogly monster is coming. You know the ghosts are real, and by the time 2/3 of the movie is blown by, boy, are you tired of the conceit.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
In fact, Claire, I think you're one of the prettiest girls I know.
The movie waits until its final act to spring the horror, and by that time, it's far too late. When the real ghosts suddenly show up, it feels like just another joke. You've been, for lack of a better term, cock-teased so intensely by the movie's opening acts with manufactured tension that ends in nothing. By the time the spooky ghost finally shows her face, I couldn't help but give a half-hearted chuckle, much in the same way I chuckled at the dry humor sprinkled throughout. Just kidding, I didn't really chuckle at the humor. Even the atmosphere fails here, and a spooky old hotel is pretty much ready-made atmosphere for horror. The Yankee Peddler Inn actually feels, I don't know, kind of cozy in a quirky, anachronistic way. It just lends once again to that indie comedy drama feel that permeates the movie and makes the ghosts seem entirely out of place when they finally do show. I do have to pass the movie some props for one decision, though. Spoiler alert for those who care. Claire, the quirky chick with a heart of gold, she's straight out fucking killed at the end of the movie. She's just dead, and a heartbroken Luke is left to explain things to the cops. You know what? If they excised the ghost from this script and Claire just died of cancer at the end, this one might have taken some festival accolades somewhere. You can see it now, a heart-wrenching tale of young love growing up slowly and ultimate loss, funny and devastating. Instead, she's killed by the ghost you were convinced up until the final act didn't even exist. I'll admit, I didn't see it coming. In fact, I didn't see it at all. After all that buildup, we don't even get to see how Claire dies. We just get a scream shot and a fade to black, followed by her body being wheeled away by paramedics in the final scene. If the ending was written this way for emotional impact, it failed. If it was written to surprise you just once in this otherwise tedious film, it succeeded. The Innkeepers just isn't worth your time. Don't watch it. And hey, if you liked this review, flirt with my channel awkwardly by subscribing and brushing up against the like button. Don't get too excited though. The like button is awkward and quirky and she's probably not interested. Maybe she is though. Nah, she's not.